Hello there and welcome to this week's edition of Women in the Fore right here on Times TV with me, Wezi Kasambala. Today I'm joined in the studios by the National Director for the Special Olympics Committee here in Malawi, and her name is Enid Mauluka. Thank you so much for joining us, Enid. So this program is really about bringing women to the fore for them to tell us about their story, women making an impact in the Malawian context. And we have women from different walks of life, but we always start with the beginning. We always want to know about how these women came to be who they are today. So tell me a bit about your childhood. What was growing up like for you?
My childhood was pretty much interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I should say I had my ups and downs,
mm-hmm.
and then through that, the experiences that I had in life,
mm-hmm.
It made me to be the person that I am today. As a child, I was so much of a tomboy, if I may.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So you weren't a girly girl.
No, I was never really a girly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, while others were playing with dolls, I always, would be seen with cars and guns and.
Oh, wow.
And I liked fighting.
Right. So should we say you actually enjoyed fighting, or you always ended up finding yourself in situations where you were fighting?
I would actually...
Through no fault of your own, of course.
Obviously.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just end up fighting,
Right.
And somehow I eventually realized that I just always wanted to be the one dominating.
Right.
Eventually. I didn't realize it then, but then eventually I realized that it was all about that.
Because I was going to ask you that when you look back now in retrospect, have you discovered what that was, why you constantly were in conflict with others? So you've already answered that in a lot of ways. So you felt it was a need to be dominant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even when we're playing house, I would always wanted to be either
the boss,
father or the boss, so that I'm in charge. Whatever I say, everybody has to do it.
Yeah. How did that play out with your siblings and your friends at the time? That must have not gone down very well.
Not really well, because especially with my older brother,
yes,
the one I come after, would always fight, and then he would also always try to pull me down, and then he'd always call me chicken, such
yes.
things. Yeah, that's too girly, And then he'd always try to put me in my place to say, no matter what you try to do, you're still a girl,
right?
And that's not going to change anything. And issues to do with age also was an issue. Yeah, I'm older than you, but I always wanted to be like on top of things.
It's interesting you should say that your brother said that irrespective of what you tried to do, you're always going to be a girl. That instantly suggests that even to him at that point, girls were somehow perhaps inferior.
Yeah, that's what it implied, actually. Yeah, that's what it implied, and I think it's something that I really hated.
Yes. And do you think that's what made you even more kind of confrontational?
Yeah, I believe so. It
subconsciously.
Because, it's sort of a psychological game. It plays within you.
Yeah.
So the more that happens, the more like it kind of pushes you.
But then you can also use it to your advantage as well, right?
You can. As you grow also, you actually try and weigh and see how that benefits you as you're growing. But at a young age, you don't really realize it until you get to a certain level.
You're just wondering why you're constantly being put in the naughty corner for fighting. So, how many siblings did you have? Was it just you and your brother, or were there more?
Well, actually, I would always... Maybe I spent more time with that one. For the rest, they were really older than me. So
right.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. So, would you say you grew up in a household with lots of family members, or was it a relatively small unit?
It was a big family, I should say. Actually, I'm the last born in a family of 9.
Wow. Wow. But for those days, that was very, very normal.
Yeah, it was really normal. So, but when we look at it now, it was like a huge, huge family.
Yeah. What do you think were some of the benefits of growing up in a household like that?
I had a lot of people to look up to, because especially when you look at me and... I should say my late sister, who was the firstborn.
Yeah.
There was a huge gap, so much that instead of me looking at her as my sister, I looked at her more as a mother.
As a mother figure, yeah.
Yes.
And then your mom almost becomes like your grandma.
Exactly. That's how it was. So it was pretty much with all of my sisters. And I actually became a bit more responsible as I was growing, because I would look at what they were doing, and then I would also be like, I want to do better than that, you know, because every time like they're punishing you, they would try to tell you, look, if you keep on doing what you're doing, things are not going to end well for me. Look at what I'm doing, you know. So I'd always look up to them, and I guess I just try to follow their footsteps.
Wow. Yeah. And who would you say your influences, other than your siblings, what were the other influences or role models you had when you were growing up?
Okay, I did not, this is how I'm going to put it. I did not grow up in a like rich family. At the same time, I can't say we grew up in a poor family. But what used to happen
So you were relatively comfortable.
Yes, yes. So I'd look at people that I thought were there, you know, and then...
You mean economically?
Economically, yes. So I'd look at them, and then I would be like, I want to be like that, you know. I want to be like that. So... I cannot pretty much point who it was, but then I would always look at people that were kind of, you know, at a higher level, and I always might tell myself that one day I want to be that. I want to be there. You know, that's...
So how did that translate into what you were doing academically, like when you were young as a little girl? What did you enjoy studying and things like that? What was school like for you? Being a tomboy, but also someone who associated more perhaps with the male sex. What was that like? What was school like?
School was pretty much interesting, even until, because I went to a girls' school at some point. But before that, school was pretty interesting, because in class, the biggest fight for me was to be on top of the boys.
Right. So even when you went to school,
yeah, you still had. So there were times I remember, I may not necessarily remember who these people were,
yes,
but I remember I got into fights simply because somebody was on position 1 and I was on position 2. So I'll be like, yeah, how is that possible? You know, I'm supposed to be there.
Yes.
And so every time there would always be these fights. And
was that in primary school or secondary school?
In primary school, but
wow.
In secondary that changed.
Of course, because it was all girls. So that's interesting. So when you then went to an all girls school, that must have been quite a shock to your system, given that you were somebody who, like I said, associated more with the male sex in terms of how you related, and you were a bit of a tomboy. To now be thrust into a female environment, that must have been a bit of a change for you.
It was a huge change, and it actually...
How did you adapt?
It took me time. But then eventually I got there. You know, in most of these girls' school, you also tend to meet people that are almost similar to you.
Okay,
know?
yes.
So you tend to hang around with people that are more like you.
Yeah.
You know, so the people that you find there that are behaving in a similar way, and then you're like, okay, I think I should just be part of that. And then you become part of it. And but then as you go, maybe you also see some things that you don't like, and then you tend to join another group, until that's how I actually integrated into the system. So at first it was really, really difficult.
Yeah.
But
did you? Why did you think it was that difficult? Was it because you found it difficult to be accepted, do you think?
Not that people didn't accept me. They accepted me, but just that they thought I was weird.
Yeah.
You know?
And girls will be vicious, won't they? And
obviously.
Naturally.
Naturally, yes. And then when people are doing their makeup, their hair, to me, I was like, that boring.
Didn't interest you.
Know, I wasn't really interested. So I'd be interested more in playing basketball.
Yes, sports.
Yeah. You know, or doing something else that's not like too girly, you know. So there were a few people that were a bit like me. And of course, there are negative things that come with it.
Yes, of course. And I can imagine the stereotypes attached to that.
Yeah, yeah. So
how did you handle that?
To be honest with you, I really didn't care. You know, I would always tell myself to say, okay, as long as I know myself, I know the person that I am, people are still gonna talk, you know. So I'll just be me. As long as I'm comfortable in me being me, then I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do things to please anybody. Yeah.
So when you were in secondary school, what did you excel at most? What did you enjoy most? Or where did you see your passion at that stage?
Okay, in secondary school, I did a lot of writing, poetry, you know.
So you're quite artistic.
Yes, and I thought that eventually I was going to, you know, take up journalism, which eventually I did not. I think with time I found it to be monotonous, you know, like doing the same thing you know, all the time. And I also got motivated by certain environments for me to be able to write. I needed to be somewhere where it's very natural, you know, very quiet, and you know. So for me to be able to like think, I would have to be at a certain environment. So I'm thinking, okay, even if I pursue journalism, it means for me to be able to work, I should also be under, you know, if I'm going to be writing articles and stuff.
So you wanted a conducive environment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I really didn't see that working. And obviously, eventually, I started changing, you know, and I...
So what did you go into in the end? What did you find yourself landing into? Because that's what always happens. We all think we're going to do A, B, C, D, but it doesn't always pan out that way.
No, it doesn't.
You always end up doing something completely different. So what did you end up doing in the end? I
ended up doing business administration.
Okay.
And I should say it was pretty interesting because...
So where did you do that?
At the University of Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So, you know, you realize as you go to say, okay, I'm doing, you know, with business administration, you're touching a bit of marketing, a bit of operations, a bit of this and a bit of that. So that actually made me realize, okay, here is my strength. I enjoyed more entrepreneurship.
Right.
And so I started thinking, like, you know, I could do more. Though whenever people looked at me, they looked at me as a marketing person than, you know, a mere administrator.
So this is after you had finished at University of Zimbabwe?
Yes, yes. So, but then even after, when I finished, I did not go into a typical administrative role. I ended up working at an organization, well, rather more of an NGO, where they empower young people through skills training. Yeah. So while I was there, I also discovered another part of me. You know, I really loved to do more of social work than, you know, the administrative part. So I started putting a lot of my interest to the work that I was doing then, and then started exploring on my own as well. Right. And then eventually I started my own organization. It's called IMBA. In Malawi, it's called IMBA Malawi.
Right, okay. So this was in Zimbabwe?
Yes.
So you had quite a bit of grounding in Zimbabwe. What did you have any kind of links originally, or did you just end up there because you were studying there?
Okay.
That's how you were affiliated with Zimbabwe.
I would put it in two ways. My grandfather went to Zimbabwe in search of a job. Okay. And then eventually, you know, once one person goes to a particular place,
yes, others follow.
Yeah. So when I wrote my MSc, I went there for a holiday. That was the plan. You know.
And then you didn't come back.
I didn't come back.
I love that. Okay.
I didn't come back. You know? And then...
So you spent quite a lot of time there. How many years do you think you spent in Zimbabwe?
Actually 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because after college, I worked for Young Africa for 6 years.
In Zimbabwe?
In Zimbabwe, yes. And then I came back.
And look, Zimbabwe and Malawi are very different. I mean, we're similar, but we're different, if that makes any sense. We're similar purely because of our history, the fact that we're, you know, we're neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. But there are still certain, I think, social differences. How did you compare, you know, rising as a young woman in Zimbabwe as opposed to here in Malawi? What were the differences?
It was pretty much hard. I should say I excelled.
But Zimbabwe is more progressive, I think.
It is more progressive, yes. I should say I learned quite a lot of things. It wasn't easy, but I think it was worth it. I faced a lot of discrimination. We were
in what
called
sense?
Names.
Why?
Well, Malawians are called, they say Mablandaya, meaning those from Blantyre.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of xenophobia.
Yes,
towards
it was
you.
There, yes. So even the moment you introduce yourself to somebody and they're like, Mauluka, where are you from? You know, and then everything changes. Yeah. And then even when I was at Young Africa, I actually got promoted almost on an annual basis. You know, and being very young, I ended up being the head of the organization. I became a manager at the age of 21. And, you know, people were saying,
they didn't like that.
Juju, you know, Malawian, how can she be at that position? How can she be promoted, you know, like that? And, you know, there was so much talk, you know, so they would always, you know, referred to you being Malawian, you know. So there are times when I didn't enjoy it. Yeah. But then I told myself that if I needed to excel, I just needed to accept the person that I am.
Yeah, and block all that out.
Yeah. So whenever people called me names, I'll be like, yeah, okay. So when they see that you're not getting angry, they leave you. Actually, that's how I managed to live into the system, because they would call you names, and then when you resist...
And would they do that to your face? Or was it kind of just implied through actions, through whispering?
Okay, there are things that were said, like right in your face.
Yeah.
And then there are times when people would actually be gossiping, say in a staff room.
Yes,
and then you
so whispering.
Okay. Such things. And then there are things when you actually have a fight with a verbal fight, of course.
So I was going to say, you were still fighting now that you were working? I thought you had hung up the gloves by that point. Okay,
Yeah, so you get into a verbal fight with somebody, and obviously such things would always...
Yes, will irk you.
Yeah, so it wasn't really easy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to take a short break, Enid, but when we come back, I want us to now talk about how you then obviously fast-tracked all the other stuff you did in as quick a manner as you can, and then get to where you are today, which is being the National Director of the Special Olympics Committee, which I think is really, really exciting. If you're just joining us, you're watching this week's edition of Women in the Fore with me, Wezi Kasambala, and today I'm talking to the National Director of the Special Olympics Committee for Malawi, Enid Mauluka, who was just telling us about her childhood and how she grew up. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Special Olympics Committee and how she made it to where she is today. That's after the break on Women in the Fore. Welcome back to Women in the Fore, where today we're talking to the National Director of the Special Olympics Committee, Enid Mauluka, who is about to tell us how she got this position, but also about her other experiences and how she climbed up the career ladder to get this very, very coveted position indeed. You obviously talked about your childhood and then the challenges you encountered when you lived and worked in Zimbabwe. You got to get a very good job at a relatively young age. You were promoted very early. But you didn't tell me, first of all, what was Young Africa about? I don't think you mentioned that. What kind of organization was that?
Young Africa is an international organization
Excuse me.
that empowers young people through skills training.
Right.
So not just skills training. They also have a commercial department.
Okay.
Where if you want to pursue commercial studies based on how far you've gone with your education, then you can pursue that. But they use a holistic approach where there's a component of life skills training and the entrepreneurship component. So if you are in the skills department, it means eventually you'll have to venture into a business.
Right, okay.
Or work for somebody. I mean, that would still help you with whatever skill you'd have.
Okay, so given your background, obviously you were into entrepreneurship, etc., a bit of marketing. How did you end up where you are today? Quickly talk me through that as briefly as you can to where you got to be the National Director for the Special Olympics Committee, and why the Special Olympics as well.
All right, yeah, that's very interesting. Like I said, as when I started my work at Young Africa, I discovered I had I should say a passion for people, and even besides that, like I said, I ended up starting my own organization that empowers women and children economically and socially.
Right.
So I wanted to, when I came back, of course, I tried, well, not that I tried, I worked in a few organizations, and then in the process, I still wanted to make sure that I'm still doing those things that I love doing, So when I heard about Special Olympics, I wanted to do voluntary work.
Remind us what Special Olympics is all about, for the benefit of our viewers who might not understand what we're talking about.
Okay. Special Olympics is a global movement that transforms people with intellectual disabilities through sports, health, and education. But the main component being the sports. Yeah, that's why it's actually called Olympics.
Yes. Yeah. So it's an extension of the Olympics as we know it, right?
Yes.
But this is for people with perhaps, how can I put it?
Intellectual disabilities.
Yes. Okay. I was going to say intellectual challenges. Okay. Right.
Actually, we don't use the term challenges.
You don't. Okay. All right. Right, but I'm glad you corrected me, because I was trying to say it as politically correctly as I possibly could. So you don't use the word challenges anymore?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't.
All right.
It's actually, we consider it quite discriminative.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So how did you end up there?
I started as a volunteer in 2013, rather 2012. I was helping up with a few administrative works, a bit of accounting. Then in 2014, I was invited to become a board member.
Wow, okay. So that was quite a while ago then.
It was.
Yeah.
So from 2014 to, I should say, 2017, I've been serving as a board member.
Right.
So there were challenges that we were facing as an organization. We needed a strategic approach. We, as an organization, I mean, of our nature, we depend on grants. We don't generate our own income, only through fundraising activities. But we were at a stage where we could not even fundraise, do any impact, any kind of fundraising that would really bring impact. So we need to re-strategize. So we also needed a very, very strategic way of doing things. So we kind of reshuffled everything.
Right.
And so I had to surrender my status as a board.
Right, okay.
And take up this position as a national director.
I see. So what does your job entail? I know obviously you said that it's very much dependent on grants, but what does your day-to-day job entail?
Okay, my job is pretty much strategic, if I may put it. Like I said, we are supposed to do, of course, we get grants from the international office, but then each country is also supposed to do fundraising of their own. So I pretty much have to get worried about how are we supposed to sustain as an organization? What are we supposed to do? What new approaches can we bring in the organization? What activities are we supposed to do? Because our sports is not like seasonal. It's like all year round.
Right. So, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So my works involves also planning to say, this time around, we need to go to such a place. We need to train coaches. We need to have competitions. We need to recruit new athletes. And so I'm overly in charge.
Right. Okay.
Of that. Yeah. So that's pretty much reporting.
Yes.
Report writing. I also report to the regional office in South Africa, like almost on a regular basis, almost on a weekly basis, I should say.
How would you rate the reception to this idea of Special Olympics in Malawi? How is that going when we think about it broadly?
When I think about it broadly, I think Malawi is not really aware.
Yeah.
Of what intellectual disability is.
Yes.
I remember one time I was saying we shouldn't even boast that we are in 21 districts, because when I look at all the districts that we are serving, we are serving just a really small component in that district. And every time you meet a new person and then you talk to them about Special Olympics, they are surprised.
Yeah.
They don't know what it is. And actually, each and every family in Malawi, all over the world, there should be somebody with intellectual disability.
That's right.
Because every time we conduct a training, by the end of the day, you realize that a lot of people start, being aware that this is a common problem. It's everywhere. Because when you talk of intellectual disabilities, we're also even putting in people who are slow at grasping things. I would say slow learners. It comes in different ways. At the same time, there are so many things, ways of getting intellectual disabilities. It's before you're born or after you're born, through things like meningitis, accidents, cerebral malaria, and things like that. So people really need to be aware.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is we have got a lot of work to do as Malawians.
I was going to say that, to be honest, it strikes me that beyond even just the Special Olympics themselves, I think the real work is actually sensitizing the public to the very idea of, like you said, intellectual disability in the first place. Because I don't think, like you've said, people realize that there's all those kind of forms of that particular case. People don't really realize that. And also, I think we don't know, because of our culture, I think we don't know how to deal with those issues.
People find it hard,
and there's
to
misconceptions
accept.
As well.
A lot of misconceptions.
Yes.
People think that it's to do with witchcraft.
Yes,
with
you're cursed
curses.
somehow.
Exactly. So, and most people with intellectual disabilities are branded as wamisala.
Yeah.
You know,
or simply dumb or something like that.
Exactly, which is not right.
No.
So, actually, that's really interesting. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
And the biggest day is on the 21st of this month.
Uh-huh.
And one of our major aims is to promote inclusion.
Yes.
You know, we should create an environment where we all treat each other like, you know,
like equals.
Like equals. We should be able to employ people with intellectual disabilities. We should be able to play.
Like in other parts of the world. I mean, it does happen.
It does happen. Yeah. You know, for example, in Egypt, we have one of our athletes. We call them athletes because of the sports component. Yeah?
Yes.
He works in the government, you know, in the president's office. So we want that for Malawi. You know, we should be able to give these people an equal platform, you know, to make sure they are employed, they are educated. Because even in universities, most people with intellectual disabilities, they drop out simply because, you know.
But also because we don't have the facilities to accommodate them, I think. I think we don't have the human resource that is trained probably well enough to deal with that. That's another challenge, isn't it? The personnel?
I should say that the government has intervened.
Okay, so we've had an improvement?
There is an improvement because in our educational system, they have introduced the component of... actually, I should call it special needs component.
But at what level? Is that even at grassroots level?
Yes, it is.
Even in the rural areas?
Even in the rural areas, though not all areas. Because, you know, one thing is the government is not able to reach out to everybody.
Yeah.
So you'd find that in a district, perhaps there's only one school that has got such facilities.
Right.
And then when you look at private schools, it's also very expensive for them to employ somebody with such expertise.
Absolutely.
So you realize that people are taking it for granted. So the good thing is, as Special Olympics, we are working with schools.
Right.
Our entry point is through the district education offices. So we have what we call young athletes. It's an early intervention process where we take them from the age of 2 to 7. They don't
that's
compete.
Really young.
Yeah, it's really young. So actually, that's the best way to handle people with intellectual disabilities.
Right.
You realize that those that have gone through early intervention are the ones that are making it to college. But some of them drop out because of discrimination. You know, that's the unfortunate part. So we are saying the government on its own cannot.
Yeah.
We should all come together,
you
know, and make sure that we're supportive as families, as parents, you know, because if people hear about Special Olympics, they should also, for example, in a district, they should also make sure that they find out more. We are not able to reach out to everybody, like I said.
Yeah.
But eventually, I'm sure we will get there. But then when people know of our centers, go there, you know, find out what is happening, be part and parcel, and then let's catch them while they're still young. You know, we are going to make a huge difference, trust me.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It sounds really, really, how can I put it, gratifying to sort of work in such an environment.
It is.
And very rewarding as well.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, so when we think about the sports element now, how are we doing competitively? Because I'm assuming we compete internationally as well?
Oh, yes, we do.
How is Malawi doing on that front?
Very well.
Okay.
So far, since we started competing,
yes,
we've brought home 44 medals.
Wow.
And in the last World Summer Games in 2015, a girl from Karonga brought gold medals home. It's so amazing. Just that I should show you. Yes,
should have brought me pictures as well.
Yeah, this girl is all over the world on billboards, on all our marketing materials. It's amazing, trust me. And then when you look at her, I mean, it makes you really think that we are wasting time. You know, here's somebody, an ordinary girl from Karonga. Even if you see her the time before she left, and now, there's a huge difference. You know, and even if you're to talk to coaches, even their teachers, that life after Special Olympics is completely different. It's amazing. Wow. It's transforming.
Well, I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to leave it for today, rather. A big thank you to Enid Mauluka for sharing her story. And indeed, we wish them all, or nothing rather, but the best for the Olympics. We'll be back next week, of course, with another edition of Women in the Fore. From me, Wezi Kasambala, it's bye-bye.